History books tell you the Ottoman Empire collapsed because of military defeats. They show you maps of territory shrinking. They point to backward technology and failed reforms. They lie. The Ottoman Empire fell because European bankers captured its treasury 3 decades before any army crossed its borders. The sultans lost their empire, not on battlefields, but in loan contracts. By 1881, foreigners controlled Ottoman tax collection. They seized customs revenue, they took the salt monopoly, they captured the silk tax, the stamp duties, and the tobacco trade. Not a single soldier was deployed. This was not luck. This was not organic decline. This was engineered. European financiers identified pressure points in Ottoman finances. They offered loans designed to create dependency. They built bottlenecks into repayment structures. When the inevitable default arrived, they demanded structural control over revenue streams. They established an extraction machinery staffed by European administrators on Ottoman soil. The empire did not borrow money. The empire surrendered sovereignty one loan at a time. The system worked so well it became the template. European powers exported this model to Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Persia, and China. Later generations refined it into the institutional architecture of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and structural adjustment programs across the developing world. This is Noob Historian. History has owners. We name them. You watch the news today and see Sri Lanka in economic crisis. You see Pakistan negotiating with the IMF. You see African nations selling ports and mines to foreign creditors. You assume these are modern problems with modern causes. They are not. You're watching the same system perfected on Ottoman territory in the 1870s. The legal structures, the conditionality requirements, the creditor committees, the forced privatization demands, all of it traces back to Constantinople. The bankers who conquered the Ottoman Empire wrote the playbook your government follows today. This is the history of financial colonization. And it starts with a war the Ottomans won. In 1853, the Ottoman Empire went to war with Russia. Britain and France joined on the Ottoman side. The alliance won. Russia retreated. Ottoman territory remained intact. The victory came with a price. War costs money. The Ottoman treasury was empty. Sultan Abdülmecid needed funds to pay soldiers, buy weapons, and maintain the army. His ministers looked to Europe. In 1854, the Ottoman government issued its first foreign loan. This single decision changed everything. Before 1854, the Ottoman Empire financed itself internally. It collected taxes through provincial governors. It operated mints. It debased currency when necessary. These methods had problems, but they kept financial control inside Ottoman borders. The 1854 loan broke this pattern. The Ottoman government borrowed 3 million British pounds from London banking houses. The interest rate was 6%, but the true cost ran far higher. The loan was issued at 80% of face value. This meant the Ottomans received only 2.4 million pounds while owing 3 million. The difference went to the bankers as profit. Additional commissions and fees consumed more capital. By the time the money reached Constantinople, the empire had lost nearly a third of the loan to financial intermediaries. This was the first extraction. The Ottomans repaid the 1854 loan. They repaid it with another loan. In 1855, a second loan of 5 million pounds arrived. The terms were worse. The issue price dropped to 65%. The interest rate climbed. More capital vanished into banker commissions. A pattern emerged. Each loan required a larger loan to service. Each new loan came with higher interest rates and lower issue prices. The debt grew faster than the economy producing revenue to pay it. European bankers understood this dynamic. Internal documents from Credit Lyonnais archives show French financiers calculated the risks. They knew Ottoman revenues were insufficient for long-term repayment. They lent anyway. The bankers did not want their money back. They wanted leverage. They wanted political control. They wanted access to Ottoman resources and markets. Default gave them legal justification to demand all three. British Foreign Office records confirm coordination between banking houses and diplomatic missions. British ambassadors pressured Ottoman officials to accept loans. French diplomats did the same. The loans were instruments of state policy dressed as private commerce. By 1875, Ottoman external debt reached 200 million pounds. Annual debt payments consumed more than half of all government revenue. The Treasury faced an impossible choice: pay the bankers and collapse the state, or stop paying and face the consequences. On October 6, 1875, Grand Vizier Mahmud Nedim announced the empire would suspend debt payments. The trap was sprung. The men who engineered Ottoman financial dependency operated from a single neighborhood in Constantinople. Galata sat across the Golden Horn from the Old City. Its streets housed the offices of European banks, trading companies, and insurance firms. Local financiers with names like Baltasi, Commando, and Zarifi built fortunes here. The Galata bankers served as intermediaries between European capital and Ottoman borrowing needs. They collected commissions on every transaction. They brokered deals. They provided intelligence to London and Paris about Ottoman financial conditions. At the center of this network stood the Ottoman Bank. The Ottoman Bank was Ottoman in name only. Founded in 1856 with British capital, Reorganized in 1863 with Anglo-French ownership, the bank served European financial interests on Ottoman soil. It held the monopoly on issuing Ottoman paper currency. It served as the government's fiscal agent. It arranged foreign loans. Every financial flow between Europe and the Ottoman state passed through this institution. The bank's shareholders sat in London and Paris. Its directors answered to European banking houses. Its profits flowed to foreign investors. But it controlled the machinery of Ottoman finance. This arrangement created permanent structural dependency. When the Ottoman government needed money, it borrowed from the Ottoman bank, or through loan syndicates the bank organized. The bank charged fees at every step. It profited on currency exchange. It collected interest. It demanded collateral in the form of specific tax revenues. The bank became the gatekeeper. No funds entered or left Ottoman territory without passing through European-controlled institutions. This gave foreign financiers perfect visibility into Ottoman finances, and absolute leverage over Ottoman policy. By 1875, the Galata bankers had distributed Ottoman debt instruments across Europe. They sold bonds in London, Paris, Vienna, and Frankfurt. Thousands of European investors, from major banking houses to small savers, owned pieces of the Ottoman treasury. When the empire announced default, these bondholders demanded action. They formed committees. They hired lawyers. They pressured their governments. The bondholders wanted their money. Their governments wanted something more valuable. 6 years of negotiation followed the 1875 default. Ottoman ministers tried to restructure. European creditors refused terms. Diplomatic pressure mounted. In 1881, the Ottoman government surrendered. The Decree of Muharrem established the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, known by its Ottoman name, Duyunu Umumiye. This institution operated inside the Ottoman Empire but served foreign creditors. It was colonialism without a flag. The OPDA took direct control over Ottoman revenue streams. The decree assigned specific taxes to debt repayment: the salt monopoly, the tobacco tax, the stamp duty, the silk tithe, customs duties from certain ports, revenue from Eastern Rumelia, fishing rights. European administrators collected these taxes, not Ottoman officials, Europeans. The OPDA employed over 5,000 people at its peak. It operated its own collection infrastructure across Ottoman territory. It maintained offices in provinces throughout the empire. Its employees wore no military uniform, but they exercised sovereign functions. The institution answered to a council representing bondholders. Britain, France, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, and the Netherlands all held seats. Ottoman representatives attended meetings, but held no meaningful decision-making authority. The math tells the story. By 1911, the OPDA collected revenues equal to about 1/4 of the entire Ottoman budget. This money went directly to European bondholders. It never touched Ottoman hands. Adam Bloch, the British commercial attaché in Constantinople, documented the extraction in his 1908 report. His data showed the OPDA transferred millions of pounds annually to European creditors. The institution operated with efficiency the Ottoman government itself never achieved. European collectors proved ruthless in enforcement. Peasants who grew tobacco sold their crop to the OPDA monopoly at fixed prices. The administration then exported the tobacco to Europe at market rates. The profit margin went to bondholders. Salt production fell under complete European control. Producers sold to the monopoly. The monopoly set prices for Ottoman consumers. Revenue flowed to debt service. This was taxation without representation in its purest form. The OPDA did not govern in a formal sense. It did not pass laws or command armies, but it controlled the most important function of any state. It controlled revenue. And through revenue, it shaped every decision the Ottoman government made. Want to build a railroad? The OPDA must approve, because new revenue streams affected debt calculations. Want to adjust tariffs? European powers must agree, because tariff revenue served as loan collateral. Want to reform the tax system? The OPDA already controlled the most productive taxes. The Ottoman state became a shell. It maintained the appearance of sovereignty. The Sultan still sat in his palace. Ministers still held titles. The army still marched. But real economic authority resided in European hands. Numbers do not lie. The OPDA's own records, preserved in Turkish archives, document systematic wealth transfer from Ottoman territory to European creditors. Between 1881 and 1914, the OPDA collected over 100 million Turkish pounds in revenue. Most of this went to debt service. Bondholders in London, Paris, Berlin, and Vienna received regular payments while Ottoman infrastructure crumbled. The empire needed railroads. European companies built them, but only when the lines served European commercial interests. The Baghdad Railway became a tool of German foreign policy. Branch lines connected European-owned mines and farms to ports. The network did not serve Ottoman development. It served resource extraction. The empire needed schools. Budget constraints forced by debt service limited educational investment. Ottoman literacy rates lagged behind even the poorest European nations. The empire needed a modern military. Every arms purchase required foreign loans. Each loan came with conditions. Conditions included diplomatic concessions. The system fed itself. The OPDA created incentives for Ottoman leaders to prioritize debt service over all other state functions. Miss a payment and European warships might appear off Constantinople. Miss a payment and trade sanctions might follow. Miss a payment and the remaining Ottoman territories in Europe might find themselves liberated by helpful European armies. Sultan Abdulhamid II understood his situation. He played European powers against each other, granting concessions to Germany to balance British and French pressure. This bought time. It did not buy freedom. The debt system created a class of Ottoman elites dependent on European favor. Ministers who cooperated with the OPDA kept their positions. Those who resisted found their careers ended. Young Turk revolutionaries who seized authority in 1908 faced the same constraints. They dreamed of modernization and reform. They found a treasury drained by debt service and an economy controlled by foreign gatekeepers. Their solution was war. World War I offered a chance to break free. The Ottoman Empire allied with Germany against Britain, France, and Russia. The gamble failed. The empire collapsed. But here is the lesson history books omit. The Ottoman Empire did not collapse because it joined the wrong side in World War I. It joined World War I because decades of financial colonization left it no other options. The debt system had already hollowed out the state. The war delivered the final blow to an empire already conquered. European financiers watched the Ottoman experiment with satisfaction. The system worked. Debt created leverage. Leverage created control. Control created extraction. No costly occupation required. They exported the model immediately. Egypt borrowed heavily from European banks in the 1860s and 1870s. The Suez Canal construction consumed vast sums. When Egypt defaulted in 1876, Britain and France established the Caisse de la Dette Publique. This institution mirrored the future OPDA. European commissioners took control of Egyptian revenues. In 1882, Egyptian nationalists resisted. Britain responded with military invasion, but the ground had been prepared by finance. The British Army was the enforcement mechanism. The debt system was the conquest. Tunisia followed a similar path. French loans created Tunisian dependency. Default in 1869 led to an international financial commission. French troops arrived in 1881, transforming financial control into formal protectorate. Morocco resisted longer. But the Algeciras Conference of 1906 established international control over Moroccan finances as a precondition for loans. The French protectorate of 1912 completed the process. Persia faced British and Russian pressure through concessionary demands. The tobacco concession of 1890 gave a British company monopoly rights over Persian tobacco production and sales. Persian merchants and religious authorities revolted, but the structural pattern held firm. China experienced the most extreme version. Following the Opium Wars, European powers extracted unequal treaties, granting trade privileges and extraterritorial rights. The Chinese Maritime Customs Service, run by Europeans, collected tariffs and transferred revenue to foreign creditors. In Latin America, British banks had perfected similar techniques before the Ottoman crisis. Default led to gunboat diplomacy. The pattern repeated across continents. European banks charged extractive rates. Intervention produced institutions controlling local revenues. This was not coincidence. This was system. Diplomatic records reveal foreign ministries' coordinated approaches. Expertise flowed. You believe this belongs to history. It does not. The institutions created to manage Ottoman debt did not disappear. They evolved. After World War I, the reparations imposed on Germany created new debt crises. The Dawes Plan of 1924 established international control over German finances to ensure reparation payments. The plan's architect, American banker Charles Dawes, explicitly studied the OPDA as a model. Germany's central bank fell under foreign supervision. A foreign agent general monitored German state finances. Revenue streams were pledged to reparation payments. The structure mirrored Ottoman arrangements. The system collapsed in the Great Depression. But the institutional knowledge survived. When American and British planners designed the post-war financial order at Bretton Woods in 1944, they created the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These institutions would manage international payments and development lending. The original architects intended modest roles, but crises expanded institutional reach. By the 1980s, the IMF had become the enforcer of a global debt system bearing a remarkable similarity to the OPDA. Structural adjustment programs imposed conditions on debtor nations. In exchange for loans, countries agreed to privatize state enterprises, cut government spending, open markets to foreign investment, and devalue currencies. The IMF sent missions to monitor compliance. The conditions served creditor interests. They often harmed debtor populations. When Mexico faced debt crisis in 1982, the IMF demanded spending cuts and privatization. When African nations sought assistance in the 1980s and 1990s, they received loans conditioned on reforms transferring public assets to foreign ownership. The language changed. The structure remained. Look at Greece between 2010 and 2018. Following the Eurozone debt crisis, Greece accepted bailout loans from the European Commission, European Central Bank, and IMF. This troika demanded austerity measures, privatization of state assets, and structural reforms as conditions for assistance. Greek airports went to German investors. Greek ports went to Chinese companies. Greek pensions were slashed. Greek unemployment soared, all to service debt held by European banks. Historians covering the Greek crisis explicitly compared it to the OPDA. The parallel was obvious. Foreign creditors controlled debtor nation finances through institutional mechanisms rather than military occupation. Sri Lanka collapsed in 2022. The government had borrowed heavily from international lenders, including Chinese state banks. When debt service became impossible, the economy imploded. Foreign currency reserves vanished. Essential imports stopped. The government fell. The IMF arrived with a bailout package. Conditions included tax increases, spending cuts, and restructuring of state enterprises. The same terms offered to the Ottomans 140 years earlier. Pakistan has negotiated over 20 IMF programs since independence. Each program imposes conditions. Each program requires reforms. Pakistan remains in permanent debt dependency, cycling through crisis and adjustment without achieving sustained development. African nations face growing pressure from both Western and Chinese creditors. Zambia defaulted on its debt in 2020. Ethiopia restructured in 2023. Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria all face debt distress. The IMF and creditor committees offer assistance in exchange for the same structural adjustments applied to previous generations. China's Belt and Road Initiative has generated Western criticism about debt-trap diplomacy. The accusation holds irony. Western powers accuse China of doing what European banks did to the Ottoman Empire, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Persia, and China itself. The playbook is not Chinese. The playbook is European. China learned from the masters. Empires do not require armies. They require debt. The Ottoman experience proved this beyond doubt. European powers conquered the Ottoman treasury without firing a shot. They extracted wealth for decades through institutional mechanisms. They shaped Ottoman policy through financial pressure. They hollowed out Ottoman sovereignty while maintaining its legal fiction. This model proved more efficient than traditional colonization. Armies are expensive. Administrators cost less. Bondholders extract profits automatically. No garrisons required. The men who designed this system understood its brilliance. Their successors refined it. Their intellectual heirs run it today. When you see a country in debt crisis, you are seeing the Ottoman system in operation. When you see an IMF mission imposing conditions, you are seeing the OPDA's methods applied. When you see public assets privatized and sold to foreign investors, you are seeing the tobacco monopoly and salt tax updated for the modern era. The names change. The institutions evolve. The extraction continues. Your own government operates within the system. Your tax payments service debt. Your economic options are constrained by creditor expectations. Your national sovereignty is limited by international financial obligations. This is not conspiracy. This is documented history applied to the present. The archives are open. The records are clear. The institutional continuity is traceable. The Ottoman Empire's financial colonization was not an isolated tragedy. It was a pilot project. The laboratory results exceeded expectations. The experiment went global. You live in the results. Understanding this history does not change it. But understanding explains why certain patterns repeat. It explains why debt crises follow similar scripts. It explains why reform programs always seem to benefit creditors. It explains why sovereignty remains conditional for nations outside the core of global finance. The Ottoman sultans learned too late. Their successors in Africa, Asia, and Latin America learned the same lesson. European leaders assumed they were immune until the Greek crisis proved otherwise. Debt is the tool. Control is the goal. Extraction is the result. The bankers who conquered the Ottoman Empire wrote rules still in force. Their institutions survive in modified form. Their methods remain standard practice. History is not past. History is operating system. You are running on it now.